And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTKA.com. Pleased to be inside the TMI video studio. And the miracle of modern technology is I can step outside the radio studio, come out to the video studio, and still broadcast live over the air. And then also on all our streaming platforms, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. It seemed like a special occasion, an occasion that warranted putting it out on video, as well as we have our first member of Michigan's new basketball staff in studio to spend some time introducing us to him, introducing us to the new era of Michigan basketball, and talking about some of the overriding topics in college basketball and intercollegiate athletics right now. Happy to welcome to the stage Michigan assistant basketball coach Mike Boynton. Mike, how are you?
Webb, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you joining us here, Mike. And you go from being a head coach for 7 years to being an assistant coach here at Michigan. We know that part. What we don't know, I kind of do, but I want you to open us up. Your basketball influences, your basketball background, your growth in the game. Take us back to the neighborhood in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Brooklyn is born and raised, bred there, trained there, learned how to build some calluses, how to take some L's, but also how to respond and compete. Because when I grew up there in the 80s and 90s, it was truly a place where you either learn how to survive or you didn't make it out. And I was around great players, great coaches, great people my whole life. And it gave me a chance to really figure out how I could find a niche in the game, but also how the game could help me improve my life and the life of the people who I love very much. So I'm thankful for that foundation, because it really set a tone for what I believe, but also for how I go about living and how I go about trying to impact other people that are around me.
Yeah, I just think point guards are inherently coaches. You got to be a coach on the floor, right? So that
absolutely
that lends itself to it. But there's something about being in an environment that gives you that competitive adversity all the time. Sports are that, but being a point guard in Brooklyn,
absolutely,
a point guard in New York, they're coming for your head all the time. So who are some of the guys that help sharpen your iron?
So before me, you had guys like Kenny Anderson and Stephon Marbury, and even Alan Griffin, who went to Syracuse. I mean, a ton of guys who came before I played. But just in my high school class in 2000, there were 3 McDonald's All-American point guards in New York City. So not just 3 guys in the state or 3 guys, at the position that were good, but 3 guys who were at the top of the game in the city that I was competing in every day. And that was Omar Cook, who went to St. John's, had a 21-year NBA career. Andre Barrett from Rice High School, who went to Seton Hall, had a cup of coffee in the NBA. And Talik Brown, who went to UConn, won a national championship, is actually on the staff at St. John's now, coincidentally. But that was my competition. Those were my counterparts. Those are the guys that I had to kind of sharpen my knife to compete against growing up. We all graduated in the year 2000 and all went on to have a different level of success in the game from a playing standpoint. But now we've all transitioned into a little bit more of the other side of the court. Omar Cook's an assistant coach with the Cleveland Cavs.
Yeah.
Andre Barrett works in the NBA office. And like I said, Talik's working at St. John's.
Come on, man.
Assistant.
Point guards that I mentioned before you came in, Mark Jackson, Rod Strickland.
Yeah.
Nick point guards when you were growing up, coaches.
Yeah.
Coaches
so Mark Jackson actually was a few years ahead of me, but we went to the same high school, Bishop Loughlin.
Okay.
And I was fortunate enough to play good enough in some games, have some good teammates. I broke all his assist records. So, Mark Jackson he's the best, one of the best point guards to come out of New York City, but he's only the second best point guard to play at his high school.
Right. All right. So Brooklyn guy goes south to South Carolina.
Yeah.
What was that transition like? Was it culture shock? I mean, how was it for you making that transition?
Very much so. One of the hardest things for me is that I had grown up in an environment where everybody's kind of interconnected. The city is live and well at all times. And I thought I wanted to get away for school and experience something different. I just didn't know what it would look like. And I'll never forget, it was maybe my 3rd day on campus. I was just sitting outside because in New York, especially in the summer, you sit outside and you enjoy watching people interact and walk around and stuff. And I'm sitting there, and it's probably like 5:30 in the evening. And about 5 minutes into me sitting outside, I realized I was by myself. And I was looking around like, where is everybody and what do they do if they don't hang out outside? No police sirens, no,
hey, oh my God.
I mean, nothing. And so it was that moment that I still remember vividly being like, oh, my life is taking a turn. But it was truly one of the best decisions that I made was to go to school there because it actually spearheaded where I am today. The foundation was laid in New York, but South Carolina really helped me learn what coaching was about. Not only as a player, but then obviously I got my coaching start in that state as well.
You know, I feel like a lot of the journey from a city to a college environment is like that. I remember getting to Michigan as a freshman, and it's like 11 o'clock and everything, and I'm like, you know, just feeling like I gotta go home.
Anxious, yeah.
I gotta. You feel nervous,
this is
like
my place.
I don't fit here, right?
Yes.
So, but you adapt. It did. It got to the point where I went home. I was like, why ain't everybody in the house?
Yeah. No, I go to New York City all the time, and sometimes after 2 days, I'm like, man, what's everybody doing out here? Why don't these people go home and go to sleep?
Right. Okay, so let's go from the transition from player to coach. You got a decision to make.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna keep chasing the playing dream, and then when that's over, what are you gonna do? So how did you make the decision to go into coaching?
Well, so much of my life goes back to my faith and feeling like I was led places. I really believed going into college that I first would go back to New York City immediately when I was done. I haven't been back since. But I also thought that I would play basketball for at least 15, 20, 25 more years, right? That's what a 17-year-old thinks. Lo and behold, in 2004, after I played in the NCAA tournament for South Carolina, that was the last meaningful game that I ever played. I played some pickup games and some charity stuff, but I haven't played a really competitive game where my teammates practiced all the time and did that. So I actually, on the advice of my college coaches, I played for two tremendous people, and Eddie Fogler and Dave Odom. I went to be a grad assistant at Furman University, sort of against my own will because I was 22 at the time, and both of them were like, man, we see this in you. And I was like, but I don't see it in myself. Like, I want to play some more. And they were like, why don't you give it a shot? We think you could be good. And I fell in love with it almost instantly because I felt like I was then paying forward the things that my coaches had given me, having an opportunity to impact a guy going from unconfident to really confident, or from being a small, low-level contributor to being a all-conference type player. So player development was really my niche early on. I really thought I could use my experience, the competitiveness that I had, my IQ for the game to really help young guys. And I particularly had an affinity for point guards naturally. But I just really loved teaching the game. And so I was a grad assistant for a year, and then I was hired as a full-time assistant in 2005 by Buzz Peterson. Buzz Peterson, who played at the University of North Carolina, was on the '82 national championship. His best friend is Mr. Michael Jordan himself. So I worked there for 2 years for him, and he actually left to go to the NBA. And that was probably my first realization of the business of college athletics, because I didn't know you were tied to your head coach as an assistant. I thought, I'm an assistant coach, and if they have another head coach, I'll be an assistant coach, Well, when he goes to the NBA, they hired Cliff Ellis, who was at Auburn and had retired for a while. And I left that year to go work at Wofford College for Mike Young, who is now currently the head coach at Virginia Tech. And it's amazing how life kind of full circles you at times. You don't realize my wife now actually played volleyball at Virginia Tech. So there were all these things that connected us. But I got actually offered a job to return to my alma mater in 2008 to work for Darren Horn, who had come from Western Kentucky, was really successful there with Ty Rodgers and those guys who went to the Sweet 16 that spring. And it was I was 25 years old, and I thought I'd reached the mountaintop pretty fast. I thought, man, I could be an assistant coach at my alma mater for the rest of my life and be cool with it, But again, just you learn, right? We didn't have as much success as we hoped. And 4 years later, Coach Holmes let go. And again, I'm tied to him. And so I'm trying to figure out, what's next? How do we now pivot to what we need to do and talk about being led? Frank Martin in 1998 coached me at Nike All-American Camp in Indianapolis. He comes in from K-State to replace Darren Horn and remembers that. I didn't even remember it.
He seems like the type of dude that is like that, though, right?
But I think you remember yelling at me a few times. But Frank actually keeps me on, as an administrative assistant for him for a year, and I actually got to meet during that time a guy named Brad Underwood, who's now the head coach of Illinois.
Oh, we know Webb.
I didn't know Brad, but he was Frank's top assistant at South Carolina, and so I was helping those guys really kind of lay the groundwork to what they were able to do in 17, going to the Final Four. Just showing them the lay of the land in the state. I'd been in there for a while. And then Brad gets that head coaching job at Stephen F. Austin a year later. And the funny story, I had never really been very far west, certainly as a coach. But even traveling, I'm not sure I was much further west than Alabama very often. And Alabama's not very far west at all. But Brad gets the job at Stephen F. Austin and asks me to join the staff. He had not been a head coach before, so he didn't have a staff. And because I wanted to get back to being an assistant, I really kind of accepted the job. And then I realized that I was going to go home and have to talk to my wife about it.
But I'm glad this was one of the things as people were looking at your trajectory.
Sure.
It's like, why would you go from South Carolina to Stephen F. Austin? But it's a chance to be
absolutely
an assistant again, be a coaching again.
And, as you think about, building a resume and trying to be well-balanced and having opportunities to be a head coach, the more areas that you've been impacted by and have recruited in, the more opportunity you'll have to be able to recruit good players to whatever program you are. And that's one of the things I feel fortunate. I've recruited internationally. I've recruited in the Southeast. I've recruited in the Midwest. I've recruited on the West Coast. Obviously in the Northeast, some contacts there. But when Brad gets a job at Stephen F. Austin and we go there, I didn't even know where Stephen F. Austin was. So when I go home to ask my wife if we could go here after I told Brad, okay, yes, she asked me because we had just had a son. Our first kid was born in January of that year. So he's about 3 months old at the time. And so she asked naturally, hey, sure, if you want to do this, I'm with you. I got your back. But, we need to figure out where we're going to live. So where's the school at? And I didn't know, but I couldn't tell her that I didn't know. So the only thing that came to my mind when she asked me, so Stephen F. Austin, where's the school? The only thing I could think of was Austin, Texas, because that's the only thing that made sense. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. And I'm like, Stephen F. Austin has to be in Austin, Texas. But anybody who knows Texas knows that Stephen F. Austin is not close to Austin, Texas, actually. It's actually as anti-Austin as you can get in the state of Texas. And I'm so glad we won a lot of games there because I didn't get off to a good start. But Brad and I and our staff and team had a lot of success. We won almost 90 games in 3 years. Went to the tournament each year. And Brad got the head coaching job at Oklahoma State in 2016. And I was sure that I was going to be promoted at the time.
At
Stephen F. Austin to being a head coach, just because of the success. And a lot of the players on the team were encouraging the athletics director to keep our staff together, even if Brad was leaving. But they went in a different direction. And that was disappointing for me professionally. But I had a great opportunity to go work in the Big 12, kind of put another big-time conference on my resume. And it was funny because Brad's only year as the head coach at Oklahoma State, I was an assistant. Our season ended in Indianapolis
against Michigan
with a loss to the University of Michigan.
Oh, come on, man. I was going to go there. For sure.
Man.
Look, but sometimes you fall up the stairs, man.
Yeah.
The immediate disappointment of not getting the job at Stephen F. Austin led to you getting a better job. No disrespect to Stephen F.
not
Austin,
at all.
but led to you getting a better job at Oklahoma State when Michigan helped you out a little bit. Giving Brad that exit.
Yes.
So they could hire you. So take me through that because they make a bet on you.
Absolutely.
Because you hadn't been a head coach. You guys obviously just had some success, but it was 1 year of success.
Yes.
So take me through that process of how you get that job, how you get to the point where no experience head coaching. Hey, he's ready to be the guy here at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, so I've always approached life like you just put your head down and you work as hard as you can, and you just allow the things that naturally are supposed to come to you to happen. You don't try to manipulate your way. You don't try to deceive people. And so I believe that over time, things work out the way they're supposed to. But now I'm a witness. Like I'm a living testimony to that because it was almost a year to the date that I was not initially hired as the head coach at Stephen F. Austin, and I was offered the job to be a head coach, which I obviously accepted. But the way it happened, Brad leaves the day after the loss to Michigan. And I think it was a surprise to everyone except the good Lord The AD came into my office a couple of days later and kind of had a question, said, "Hey, do you think you could do this job?" And I thought he was just kind of buying time, hey, can you hold this thing down while I find a real coach?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I said, yeah, I think I could do the job, but I don't want to waste your time. I just went through this a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna hire somebody else, go for it. But I went through the interview process and thought I did well. I had a plan. I had worked for several different people that helped me develop a philosophy on how I wanted to coach, how I wanted to recruit, how I wanted to schedule, the type of program I wanted our program to look like from the outside. And I think those people believed in that vision that I had. I was 35 years old, had never been a head coach. And I was very thankful that they decided to take that chance. So a week after losing to Michigan, we lost on a Friday, and the next Friday I was named the head coach at Oklahoma State. Mm-hmm. It's something I never really imagined or thought about much. But again, we don't always know how this thing's going to play out. Mm-hmm. So it was a tremendous, tremendous opportunity. Obviously, a great program with great tradition and a really strong conference. And I was able to cut my teeth for the last 7 years going against the Bill Selfs and Bob Huggins and Lon Krugers of the world.
Hey, man, I've had some of my fondest tournament memories beating Oklahoma State. I remember the Fab Five beat Byron Houston.
Byron Houston was
in Oklahoma
man.
State. And then, of course, they beat that team in 17. So without going over the entire 7 years, I want to focus specifically on the recruitment and commitment on Mr. Cade Cunningham.
Yeah.
Because the number one player in the country, you were able to land that guy. And this is the type of recruitment that at that point in time, man, you couldn't just pop in and say, hey, come to Oklahoma. You got to spend years recruiting that dude. So how were you able to pull that off?
Especially when you're me, right? And you've only been a head coach for 3 years at the time of his coming to school. You don't really have a super huge track record of sending guys to the pros. We hadn't been to the tournament in my time as a head coach, although I've coached in the tournament and played in it. But it really goes back to what I was talking about before. Over time, things work out the way they're supposed to if you have a true foundation and believe in something. And I started recruiting Cade as an assistant for Brad the year he was the head coach. Mm-hmm. Brad didn't really even know because Cade was just a freshman in high school at the time. And he was really kind of under the radar guy at that time at 14 years old. And I tell you, like recruits this all the time. You never know who's watching you because I didn't go to Cade's school initially to recruit him. There's a kid named Kyler Edwards, who you may know the name. He went to Texas Tech and finished his career at Houston, who was a junior in high school that year. Mm-hmm. And so I went to watch him. And Cade obviously was a freshman at the time, and I didn't know. So I watched him, and I'm like, man, this kid's pretty good. Wonder what his deal is. He's 6'6" at the time, and he's kind of thin, but he's got broad shoulders and long arms, and he has a really good feel for passing the basketball. And seems like he has a really good IQ. Mm-hmm. So after the workout, I asked his coach, I said, hey, does this kid have bad grades or something? Like, is no one recruiting him? Like, looks like a pretty good athlete. And he says, no, he's 14 years old. I said, wait a second. Hold on. That kid over there, you sure you're not talking about the other one? That kid's 14? He said, yeah, he just turned 14. His birthday's September 25th. So I said, hold on. I need to talk to Kyler, but don't let Cade leave without me at least shaking his hand. And that was the birth of it. I was the first coach to really show any interest in him. We followed up in subsequent conversations about what I thought he could become. He shared his knowledge of the game. He had a brother who played at SMU for Larry Brown. So they come from a basketball pedigree. Both of his parents were athletes. His sister played soccer and volleyball. And they had just a tremendous, close-knit family that I thought, man, I feel a connection here. And obviously he felt the connection over time that he believed in what the vision that we had. Because again, we didn't have a long resume or history of success. And now at his junior, senior year, it's Kentucky and Duke and North Carolina and Florida that are all after him. And he's now not the 50th best player, which is really good. Mm-hmm. He's the 1 or 2 best player in the country. And I was just so thankful that he believed in that loyalty. It was a big thing to him, having somebody who believed in him from day one. We're still really close to this day. My 11-year-old son and him joke about being each other's best friends because he doesn't have a big friend group. And obviously we had great success together. It was during a weird time though,
Mhm.
you know. COVID was, we're coming off the COVID season that got shut down, and we're playing in this disrupted season while he's there. But man, you talk about a kid who kind of put it all together.
Oh,
My only regret is that more people weren't able to be there to witness it, because we had limited crowds and stuff like that. But he was the player of the year in the Big 12 as a freshman. He averaged 20 points a game. I mean, we went to the tournament, won a game for the first time in 7 years or so at Oklahoma State. And so I'll always be indebted to him. Him and his family are great friends to mine today. And I certainly am glad that I'm closer to him.
Yeah, you can get to his games now. Yeah, so you did a like head coaches do, you do press conferences. And one of the things you talked about was how recruiting him then would be different than recruiting him now, that it would be easier to recruit him now than it was then. So take me into what you meant by that.
Yeah, so recruiting, let's just go 5 years ago, right? That would put us in 2019. That would put us in the year Cade's kind of making his decision. It was truly about either a blue blood's gotten in early enough, and the top players usually tend to go to those places. You can look at any data that'll tell you that, right? The top 25 players in the country, there's 6 or 7 schools predominantly that they've gone to. Oklahoma State's not one of them. But if you're not going to be a blue blood, then you can have some time to build it. So from his freshman year to his senior year, I was literally the only coach at his first high school game. There was, I mean, he wasn't that good yet, you know. And as he got to his junior year, there was a crowd. But, pouring into that and developing a rapport, getting to know him deeper than basketball was a big deal. Well, now that time kind of gets overshadowed by this NIL and exposure piece of things and the transfer portal now. And so, like, Cade's value, truly, not some sort of inflated value that we see sometimes with college athletes. His true value was that he would probably have been one of the highest paid players in the country. And it would have probably come down to some sort of financial commitment that we just weren't at a place to do. But if all it takes is money, then you can save a lot of time, right? And so that's what I meant. It wasn't any shot at anybody or anything like that. I was just saying that, it's harder to overcome your financial shortcomings by working now, because it's kind of leveled the playing field for everybody, and it's giving you an opportunity to see, well, if you can offer me $1 million and somebody else is just going to give me a scholarship, I could get hurt during this first year.
Right.
And I want some assurities in that. So I'm thankful I wasn't trying to recruit Cade to Oklahoma State then. I think at Michigan, I may have a better chance. Strong brand, great academic institution. And so I'm thankful to the opportunity that Coach May has given me to be here.
Yeah, so let's dive into that, and we'll get into the philosophy of, recruiting high school guys versus recruiting portal guys, building maintaining a culture in that mix. And then at the same time, how do you plan roster retention into there are a lot of layers and levels to it. But let's talk about how you connect with Dusty. So obviously things end at Oklahoma State. How did things link up with Dusty, and did you have much familiarity with him before?
Yeah, I mean, again, you just never know when seeds are planted for a later time of harvest. In 2014, Dusty was an assistant coach at Louisiana Tech. And my story about Austin, Texas, not being anywhere close to Stephen F. Austin, actually lends to this, because Stephen F. Austin is so much closer to Louisiana than it is to Austin, Texas. It's a joke almost, right? And so there were a couple recruits that we because our programs were both in the top of our conferences at the time. And so we recruited a similar caliber player, a lot of JUCOs in that area. And so there were a couple times where we shared official visits. So a kid would visit Stephen F. Austin on a Thursday to Saturday, and he'd go to Louisiana Tech Saturday evening to Monday. But there was no other way to get from one place to the other than a drive. And so there were a couple times that we actually exchanged a recruit back 10 years ago. And he thought, just like I did, that when Mike White left Louisiana Tech, that he would become the head coach there. Didn't work out. And so we had a shared experience in that regard, because one of the things when he thought he was interviewing for the job that he would try to do was hire me from Brad's staff. Didn't work out, but that was our first really connection. And we've stayed in touch. In fact, one of the guys who worked for him in his first year at FAU is one of my best friends named Eric Pastrana. He's an assistant right now at Georgia with Mike White. So I hired Eric, because we worked together at Stephen F. Austin. I hired Eric to Oklahoma State from Dusty's staff. And then he left me to go back with Mike White at Florida, because he's from Florida. So there's been these little small connections, but we've never worked together. We've just always had a great respect for each other. So when I get let go, there were a lot of things that went through my mind, whether I just take some time off. I was going to be fortunate to be in a position to not have to rush into doing something I didn't necessarily want to do. But I'm not wired to not work. I really enjoy being around people, working with kids. And so there were some other schools, and I won't name them, that offered me an opportunity. And none of them really like grabbed my focus and said, man, this is something you got to really give some thought to. And I remember I was out for a walk with my wife, and I got a text from Coach May, said, hey, are you available this evening for a talk? And I showed my wife. She said, who's that? Says the head coach of Michigan. She got excited.
Okay.
My wife was from Holland.
Okay. Okay.
And, that was a part of it, but it still had to make sense. So when I talked to Coach and he talked to me about what he was looking for, what he thought he could try to build here, it really became pretty easy, honestly. Who he is, what he's about, the success that he's looking to build at this program, the brand of Michigan, the Block M, like all those things were things that I was hoping I would have at my next opportunity. Didn't know whether it be as a head coach or assistant. And our philosophies, just in terms of building a team and how we wanted to coach, really aligned. And one of the things that I learned in my time as a head coach, alignment with your staff is maybe the most important thing that you can have to put yourself in a position to be successful. And I felt that. And I knew the other guys that he was talking to about bringing in on the staff and their commitment to just the process and not getting distracted if things aren't going your way in a particular moment. And so it was pretty easy once I knew he was serious, and I wanted to be at a place where I could add value, where I could use my experience as a head coach to be a better assistant for the next head coach if that was the position, but also at a place where you could win it all. And I believe all those things are true here. I mean,
yeah, man, so many things resonate. We're talking to Michigan assistant basketball coach Mike Boynton here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTKA.com. The head coach's ability to hire assistants who complement him. And not just one, but all the assistants. I've seen staffs who have one really good assistant and they're carrying the rest, right? I've seen staffs that have three really good assistants who don't mesh.
Absolutely.
That's a problem.
Yes.
When you find the chemistry, you get what John Beilein was able to do in 2013 or in 2018, right?
Sure.
Because those staffs were super cohesive. And so when I sit and I listen to Dusty say at his introductory press conference, I'm going to put together this staff, but understand, we're going to recruit guys that fit Michigan, but I'm also going to be spending 25 to 30% of my time on NIL. Man, you better have a hell of a staff you're going to be doing. But you got to do that in this day and age, right?
Absolutely.
On the NIL side of that, and you're familiar with that piece because I hear a lot of coaches talk about what kind of support are they getting from their institution. That's part of it. Okay, so now you got the institutional support. Man, you got to go hustle the rest as the head coach. And I really see Dusty taking that to heart. Like, I got to be out on this grind recruiting NIL support, which means, hey, you know what, Mike, I gotta have these assistants who have some experience beside me that can really pull their own and then some. That's what I kind of see coming to fruition here.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, it's go back to our Dusty and I's first conversation about this, and I asked him what he was looking for, and I shared with him what I was looking for, because it's got to work for both sides, and it wasn't necessarily about what I needed; it was about what I thought I could add. And those things aligned. But like you said, my experience as a head coach gives me an opportunity to say, hey, you know what? I know you're being asked to go to this breakfast and then do this meeting on campus and then do this lunch with somebody else and then plan practice and then go see 3 donors for dinner. But we also have 13 players that need our attention. You know, you have a wife and children who need some of your attention. I've lived that, right? That sphere of trying to do all of it, which eventually you get diminishing returns in some area of that sphere. And so you got to have people who you can say, hey, Mike, I need you to go to this frat house today. I need you to come do this radio hit for me. I need you to go speak to this donor. I need you to make sure that, you know, whoever the player is, he looks like he's been struggling in practice. I've got to jet out after practice. Can we make sure he's going to be in a better place tomorrow when he shows up? Like, those are the things that the staff has to handle. You talk about Coach Beilein's staff. I know a lot of those guys, Bakari and Laval. Those are really good friends of mine. I talked to both of those guys about taking this job and the things, because from the outside, there's a perception of what could be possible. But unless you have boots on the ground and you can talk to people who you trust to give you the real detail on what the challenges are as well, right? Because there are challenges everywhere. But when I talked to them, it made even more sense and it made it almost impossible for me not to do it.
Yeah, I learned a lot of what I know about staff chemistry from those two dudes.
Sure.
Some of my guys to this day, right? Yep. And they, along with Jeff Meyer, were really effective at doing the things that you talk about doing for them. Before them, felt like John Beilein didn't have a staff that could really compliment him in that way, or at least maybe they were capable, but he didn't have that kind of, there hadn't been that kind of confidence,
no doubt,
established. It was after that. And it was, I mean, he went from running his office, which was great.
Sure.
All of a sudden they got ball screens, and he's talking about ball screens like they were just invented. I was like, hold up, man. I mean, but those guys,
you got Trey Burke and Tim Hardaway and Nick Stauskas.
Right.
You got to have somebody that can tell you, hey, man, coach, he doesn't need a whole lot of help out there. We actually need you to kind of get out of his way a little bit.
Right. Or coach, we gonna run this set, but if they blow it up, we got to do who just go get it, coach. You know, let's have some personality in here to coach. So that was amazing to see them really mesh and meld like that. But to get back to the here and now and kind of watch how it is great. The portal is great when you have to flip a roster and come into a program. But I wonder how you balance that with establishing and maintaining a culture.
Yeah.
So beyond this year and how you use the portal. And then when it comes to, you know, NIL and roster retention as well, how do you marry all of those things? Because you do need to go to the portal every year, but how much do you do it? You want to recruit high school prospects, but you recruit high school prospects and develop them, then they jump in the portal. So how do you, with your experience, think you bring all that together, and how do you think that's going to work with Dusty here at Michigan?
Yeah, so you got to always have the mission's intent, right? And that's got to be the thing that you always look back to, is whatever decisions we're making, does it align with us moving this ball towards this goal? And you're not going to always get it right, but like, we want to make sure that the Michigan brand is always first and foremost the thing that we represent in the highest class manner possible. So we got to bring in quality kids, right? You can't recruit everybody, because everybody doesn't fit in Ann Arbor on this campus and represent this program. Kazi and Jalen and all those, like, everybody who's been here has a lot of pride in the fact that they wore this jersey. And so you got to recruit people who want to be here, who want to win, who want to be connected to this program forever. It's not going to always work out that way. So the high school kids today have a hard time getting on the court and having an opportunity to really contribute to success. There really just aren't that many Cade Cunninghams out there. Even really good high school players. I mean, I think there are 13 out of the 24 McDonald's All-Americans from last year's game in the transfer portal. Right? They didn't forget how to play. They were impatient, or they picked a place where it wasn't as easy as they thought it would be, and now they're looking for something new. And so you got to identify deeper than just the basketball talent. The fit matters. The fit with the school, the fit with their teammates. And so I can't talk a whole lot of specifics about who we've gotten, but I think there's enough information out there that there's an intentionality with not just taking the best names, but taking guys who can complement one another. Also taking guys who have the ability to be here maybe for more than 1 year. And now you start to build some continuity in how you play. And the best thing that you have within a program is your older guys taking the younger guys under their wing and showing them the way. And so I'm trying to think of names that I can say.
Yeah, I got a list of
So,
guys that you guys have announced already.
But guys who may be coming as freshmen and think it's going to be one way. If he's got a junior who's been through it, that on that moment that he's struggling, if that young man who's a junior is willing to put his arms around him and say, "Hey, I've been where you are. You know, you had a tough day at practice. Come back tomorrow, watch some film, have a good attitude." Eventually, that kid breaks through, and if he's good enough, he helps you win a lot of games.
So, assessment of fit. You said fit. That's a broad term.
Yes.
I mean, fit can work as far as basketball is concerned. You need, Cade needs some shooters around him.
Absolutely.
That would fit.
Yes.
With the Pistons, right? But cultural fit, especially when you got to handle, I think Dusty called it speed dating.
Yes.
It's hard to really figure out how she is in 15 minutes.
Yes.
Versus, I've known her my whole life.
Absolutely.
Like I know my wife my whole life.
No doubt.
Like I can't imagine trying to speed date and find a wife speed dating, right? So that's an interesting process of how do you assess the cultural fit. I'll give you an example. Big time prospect. We'll say I just give Cade Cunningham. It's not even Cade. It's someone not Cade Cunningham. Maybe they are a mid-tier prospect.
Okay.
And they come in the door and the first thing they want to know about is NIL. Is that something from a cultural perspective that would turn you off? Or is that something that you look and say, this is the era that we live in? I got to understand that for a lot of guys and families are going to come in asking about NIL first.
Yeah, it can be a turnoff. We're pretty committed to making sure that we want to always have the opportunity to be competitive in that area. The thing we talk about is everybody has a list of priorities, right? And while NIL may be really important because of the circumstances of a young man or family's life, if it's more important than the opportunity to impact or be impacted by the University of Michigan and our staff, then it's probably not going to be the right fit, right? So we can't tell them what their priorities are, but we've got to find out what they are. Our job is to figure out how much do they care about winning? Do they care about being a good dude, a good teammate? Do they care about growing and learning and getting better? And then from a family fit culture standpoint, what do we need to do to help them feel like they have everything they need to be successful here? And NIL is a part of that. The only reason that people are kind of, I think, turned off by NIL is because it feels like something that used to be frowned upon just recently. And that's true. So it's like, how do we go from this is cheating to just openly offering these opportunities? And again, I say it all the time. Do you have a Blockbuster card in your wallet?
Not anymore.
No, you don't. About 25 years ago,
Sure
if
did.
you didn't,
Right.
you were on the outside looking in. Because on
Right.
Friday night, man, you couldn't go to the place where it was packed, and so you got to be able to adapt. Life changes. We went from that to Redbox to streaming, and now cable service is almost out altogether. And so if you're not willing to adapt, then you're going to kind of fall by the wayside. And you can't have too much pride to be willing to have an open mind about how kids want to be recruited and what's important to them. And there's a lot more people involved and engaged in the recruiting process. A lot of the kids have agents now, and they represent multiple kids that get recruited by multiple institutions. And so if they're having conversations with school B, even if it's not about the prospect like you're recruiting from them, they may start asking questions. If you don't have the answer, they're like, well, we know that this is possible, and can this be worked out? So speed dating is a real thing, because now you've got to get the commitment and then get to know them on the back end, sort of. But that's where having a young staff that's high energy, that wants to be out beating the bushes, gives you an opportunity to feel like you continue to build those relationships.
So what's a sustainable strategy? I mean, you got some programs that they gonna flip their roster every year. I mean,
Absolutely.
we're gonna go in the portal and find 5-6 players that we think fit what we do, and we're gonna do the same thing next year. Yep. Is there an ideal mix to it from your perspective or from Dusty's perspective? Because obviously representing how he wants to do things.
Yes.
Is it building in the portal, or is it tweaking in the portal? I mean, how do you think long-term, what's the vision as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, so again, I think more than ever, you got to be willing to adjust year to year also, because even more to the point of things changing, the kids don't have to stay ever. So it used to be if you had a really good freshman, or even if you got a transfer in as a sophomore, you felt like you could project how much time you may have with that young man save him going to play professionally, which is good for everybody. Well, now they can come in to your place as a freshman. They can go somewhere else as a sophomore. They can come back to you as a junior. They can go somewhere else as a senior. And so you got to be willing to obviously have some foresight and feel inside your locker room as the season's going along and anticipating who's unhappy, who may be being pulled away, but also keeping in mind that you don't want to have, for us, the strategy is not going to be every year 10 new guys. It's going to be a couple freshmen that we think can help play for us a little bit, that we can develop, mixed with some vets who've been there, that have been through the wars, whether it be in ACC or the SEC or whatever, that we know have proven they could win, and just find that balance. But the thing you got to be willing to tweak is just from year to year, how aggressively you're pursuing each of those areas, right? And so you get it in the mix on a Cade Cunningham out of high school. Maybe you don't take also a grad transfer who plays his position because you're not going to play them both, right? Cade was one of the few guys who we knew could impact winning from day one. I didn't promise him he would start. I did tell him it would be hard for him not to.
You think? Right. All right. So let's start getting into the nitty-gritty as far as how things are going to look here at Michigan. Dusty kind of talked about his offensive philosophy. I'm curious how much alignment there is between what you were doing and what you will be doing here, and what it's going to look like on the court. We're going to talk about, I think you guys have announced 5 guys. We'll talk about those 5 guys, but what it's going to look like when they all get on the court here.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I've actually felt would be most beneficial to me coming here is the opportunity to learn from a guy who's proven that he's a wizard offensively. You know, he's got a forward-thinking mind. He studies the game incessantly, and whether it be European basketball or high-level college basketball, NBA, he tries to figure out where's the game going. And because that's what the kids are attracted to, is where the game is going, right? So more floor spaces, more shooting, more passing and cutting, more true kind of movement, not as much straight set offense where everything's stopping and looking at him for a call and advice every play. And that was probably a thing that I needed to learn and grow in as much as anything. And so an opportunity to learn from him would be great. But that paired with some areas that I've been really good at, which is on the other side of the ball. I coached 4 teams that were top 50 defenses in the country in 7 years. 2 years ago, when our team wasn't eligible for the NCAA tournament, we had the number 4 defense in the country. And so to get a team who can't really play in postseason to commit themselves to playing together that way, especially on defense, is one of the things I'm most proud of in our time. And so you'll see length, but IQ, passing, and shooting are premium in Coach May's system. And then we just got to figure out how to marry that with what we want to do defensively to give ourselves a chance to, like I said, compete at the highest level of the national championship.
It was a great segue because I was going to sort of ask you about expertise and whether there's role definition among the assistants. Like, is there, I don't know if you would call it a defensive coordinator, or there, each guy has a specialty that Dusty will lean onto. Is it that rigid as far as role definition is concerned, or how is that part of it?
I wouldn't use the word rigid, but I think that the structure, there's some structure there. And I think clarity and structure is always important because you don't want your kids to not know where to go for answers. You know, and so as much as you can streamline it, again, it takes some stuff off of his plate. So he's not taking every question every day from every player, right? When on the day we're really, really focused on defense and the kids struggled, who do I need to go watch film with? You know, who's kind of helping in this area? So a lot of that is still being determined. I'll be a big part of that, but it'll be a collaborative effort with probably another assistant or 2 on that side. Same thing on offense. Coach May will probably be the lion's share of that, along with maybe another assistant to help him. And so we'll divvy it up, but you know, it's not as rigid as like football, right? Where there's so many guys, you have to have not just the defensive coordinator, but you got to have the safeties coach. The DBs need a different coach. The linebackers need a different coach. The linemen need, and so just you got 15 guys, and enough staff to kind of make it where it's 2 or 3 guys that can handle, each area.
As some coaches, I've seen because now you got 2 other assistants.
Yes.
And I've seen some coaches talk like, hey, that's going to be my skill development, guys.
Yes.
Because I'm going to focus a lot of attention as much as I can on growing the skill development. I'm curious your philosophy on that too.
Yeah.
Skill development versus strength and conditioning, how you balance the two.
Sure.
And where you guys are on those two fronts as far as S&C and skill development.
Yeah, so coach is still hiring. He's still in the process. I think he's down to 2 candidates for the strength and conditioning spot. Again, just another kind of credit to him. You know, he didn't want to rush and just bring a guy in that was going to make our guys bigger and stronger. Like, that's not really what it's about. How does making them bigger and stronger impact their ability to be better basketball players?
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to build bodybuilders here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not trying to build offensive linemen. You know, we're trying to build fluid, athletic guys who can translate what they do in the weight room to go in the block and the shot when we need to. Because we can put the structure in place, but players got to go make plays.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so sometimes the system is good and it's clean, and if the dude's not athletic enough to go make the play at the rim, it's not a whole lot you can do about it.
Yeah, here's why I ask about skill development, because
Sure.
Dusty made it clear from day one, we're going to shoot a lot of threes.
Yes.
We're going to shoot a lot of threes.
Yeah.
Because he said they count more than twos, right?
Yes.
So it makes sense.
Especially if they're open.
From an analytics standpoint. But part of that is, you know, making average shooters good shooters great.
Yes.
Takes putting up a lot of shots. That was one of the things that Beeline really focused a lot of skill development time on. So is that part of the process for you guys?
So that position, Drew Williamson, who was with him as an assistant at FAU, Hall of Famer at Old Dominion, actually started his career at the University of North Carolina. Really, really good with that. And you know, skill development is just making players better. Like, but you have to have it's not, when I played, you know what we did? We said, hey, all the guards, you guys come here. We're going to do this workout. You're going to do it all the same. All the big guys basically means you're 6'7" or bigger, right? Whether you can shoot or not. And now, you know, a 6'10" guy could need to work on coming off screens. If you watch the evolution of basketball, what position does Nikola Jokic play? What position does Giannis Antetokounmpo play?
Yeah, he's like a point center.
Yeah, what position does Chet Holmgren play? Or Victor Wembanyama? And we don't have those kind of freaks.
Oh, don't even get me started on Chet, man. I called Chet. I think I might have called him a center at one time. His dad called me, like, man, don't call him a center. Don't call him a center. So to your point, positionless basketball is the thing.
It's more like, how do we take the skill that they have and maximize it within how we play? And so you may see a 6'10" kid shoot more threes than a 6'6" kid, because a 6'6" kid's not a great shooter, and we need him to be more of a downhill physical driver. Whereas a 6'6" kid going to stand in the post may not be good for him either, if he's not physical and strong in a league like this to be impactful. And so just, again, having an open mind about what they're good at, but where can we grow their game to fit and how we want to play. And so that's what Coach Williamson will do, and he'll head that up, and we'll help him. We'll watch film together and do some of that stuff. But again, I think Dusty's got such a focused plan on what he wants and how he wants us to be. You know, he's so far ahead of this thing on where I was coming into my first head coaching job, because there were things that I believed, but I wasn't sure of, if that makes any sense.
Well, he's also, to cut you a little slack here, this is his second job, right?
Sure.
A lot of the things that he can apply here, he was able to take from his former job, which you can obviously, in an assistant role, bring here. But when you become a head coach again, you can take it there too. Yeah,
there's no question. I mean, we talked about this in the process of me taking a job. You know, he got his first head coaching job at FAU with pretty much no expectations, very, very little exposure. I'm not sure if people even really knew much about him until year 5, when they was making a run to the Final Four. And they're like, oh, wow, these guys are good. But he had 3 or 4 years to kind of work it under the radar, behind the scenes, when they were putting together something really cool. You know, I got my first head coaching job in the Big 12.
It's prime time. After a year on the job.
My first ever big head coaching win on the road was in Allen Fieldhouse.
Wow.
So talk about learning on the job and you know, being put in a fire pit and having to figure it out. But I'm thankful for the experience, because I really believe it's going to help me be so much better of an assistant for Coach May.
So let's talk about some of these guys that you have announced, and we will. I'm very focused on those. So starting with the first guy announced was a recruit who I have had to adjust myself. I'm a diehard Bad Boys Detroit Pistons fan.
Okay. I know.
Diehard all the way, man. You know, Isaiah Thomas is my favorite player of all time. I mean, I remember we were at, quick story, we were at Spieth.
Okay.
This was back, man, this had to be circa 2004.
Sure.
And we were watching a bunch of games, and I remember walking out, and I saw this dude. He was walking down, and he had his Kango pulled over his head. And man, I know how Zeke. I've watched him so much. I know his gait. And I said, Zeke, and nobody, because nobody was talking.
Sure.
He turned around. He's like, oh, come on, man.
Yeah,
but he took off his hat. Was like, hey, what's up?
Time.
So when I say that's my guy,
absolutely,
that's my guy.
Absolutely.
And y'all just recruited one of his arch enemy's son, man. You know how hard that is. But you know, you bleed for the blue. And Justin Pippen is now a Michigan Wolverine.
Yes.
Talk to me about his game, because he's a guy who, you talk about development.
Yes.
If you went, a year ago or early in the year, he might have not been on your radar. By the end of the year, he's on a lot of teams' radar, and obviously he chose University of Michigan.
Yeah, and I'll say this to Michigan fans out there. There are going to be some guys like him. His name obviously gives a little bit different pedigree to it. But there's going to be some guys coming out of the high school ranks that were area that we recruit that aren't going to be at the top of the rankings, because coach knows what he's looking for from a skill and trajectory standpoint. Sometimes the kid who's the best player in his junior year in high school has peaked. And so people wonder, man, what happened? That kid was the top 5 player in the country 2 years ago. That was his best basketball. And we're trying to look for guys who still have some growth in their game. So maybe he may be only the 80th best player, but we think he can become one of the best guys in 3 years. And I think Coach Beilein did a really good job of that during his time. But Justin is obviously he comes from a great basketball pedigree. Not only his dad, but his brother, who had a similar trajectory as he, playing for the Memphis Grizzlies now, was a kind of under the radar guy, went to Vanderbilt, had a good career. And we see a lot of his development being his best basketball 2 years from now. Physically, he's going to get stronger. He's probably going to grow a little bit more, but he loves the game, and it's sometimes hard for kids who have grown up with a famous Hall of Fame type dad to really love the game. A, they don't need the game. And B, they've always been told this is what you have to do.
Right.
And so sometimes those guys are really hard to get committed to the work that it takes to become better. And he's gotten so much better over the last year and a half. He's going to get so much better over the next year and a half. And I think you're going to see a guy who has the ability to, like I said, as a freshman, want to get on the court and have some impact to winning. But the continuity, right? You keep him around for a couple of years, he'll be one of the better guys on our team.
Man. It's funny you raised that point about how, it can sap their love for the game.
Sure.
A lot of guys I've run into love the game, but the shadow is so big.
Absolutely.
That they can never get out of it. So I feel like when you find a dude who can thrive as the son of not just a great player, but an unbelievable player, you're getting a dude who's going to be mentally tough.
Yes.
Right. Who's going to know the game, who's going to be coachable. Not knowing him, it feels like all of those elements are part of his equation.
Yeah. And just humble, obviously they've got some family down. He lives out in LA. They've got some family down in Chicago. So they're familiar with the region, the school, the conference, and we're thankful that he decided, despite all the things, right? Because we're pretty close to Detroit now, despite all the things you opened us up with.
Hey man,
we're gonna be able to protect him here.
Bad Boys fan, it's been decades, right? We got Michael Jordan is on your shirt.
Absolutely.
So a lot changes over time. So it's all good. It's all good. But you talked about how intentional you are as you sort of put this roster together. You can go in the portal and grab a bunch of names.
Yes.
And we talked about fit earlier, and they don't fit.
Yes.
But it's very clear, looking at the guys that you guys have targeted and landed, that they fit. You got a bunch of dudes who can shoot, starting with Rubin Jones, who North Texas, I think he was a 42% three-point shooter.
Yeah, just under.
So tell us about what he, in addition to that, what he brings to the table.
Well, not in addition, but the most important thing he brings, Rubin Jones, coming from a really, really good program, being coached by really good coaches, and he's the all-time winningest player in the history of that program. And so when you talk about that, there's a certain level of expectation that he's going to have on himself. Winning's not going to be foreign to him. And so you can go into the portal and recruit guys that put up big numbers. And what you'll hear us say a lot is even bad teams have a leading scorer.
Right.
So, but when you find a guy who knew how to sacrifice, he has a great defensive pedigree, coming from a great defensive program, being coached in that side of the ball. But the winning is the thing that coach really wanted to recruit winners, guys who had played in the NCAA tournament before and have had success, guys who have won conference championships, guys who know what it's like when you talk in the dog days of February about, hey, this practice is important. Don't look at the schedule. Don't look down the line. We got to get through today. Rubin Jones brings that as well as experience. Obviously, he's going to be a guy with 1 year. We're going to sprinkle some of those guys in, but we won't live and die with just grad transfers. But he's a guy that we know will have a great impact on our team in year one.
A guy who will be around for more than a couple of years, knock on wood, right? Tre Donaldson.
Yeah.
So, they're, without talking about, there are a lot of guys in the portal, a lot of point guards in the portal. I mean, hell, a lot of SEC point guards
absolutely
in the portal, right? And you prioritized him. And so take me into that thought process, because watching it from the outside looking in, I see him as a guy on a team where he had to split time with another big time, highly rated guy.
Oh, yeah.
But did well in that role.
Yes.
Shot the ball at a high clip, was a really good distributor, but wasn't the highest average as far as scoring available in the portal. What made him be a great fit for y'all?
Well, Coach talked about from day one, he wanted to get the anchors and point guard and a big man, right? Those are areas that we're like, we need to make sure we lock those in and have really good players at those spots. And then, the other players are really important, but if you have a really good point guard and you got a really good big man, that's an incredible place to start. And they're hard to find also. But you look at Tre, and everybody naturally goes to points per game. I think he averaged like 6 and limited minutes. But his assists to turnover, they got 151 assists and 46 turnovers, something like that. So right at 3-1 for a guy who's gonna be your primary handler and vocal leader on the floor, you need a guy who values taking care of the basketball. And not just not turn it over, but also getting the ball to the people who need to score. While being able to score himself one at a time, because you can only be as good a passer as you are a scorer. It's hard to be a good passer if you can't score, because teams won't guard you as well. And so he's got a great energy about him. He's always been a leader. He's got a football background, so there's some toughness there. Comes from Tallahassee, Florida originally, and the kid who we just know had a great desire to be here and play for Coach May. And we're looking forward to having him here.
Yeah, man. And I talk to people about it. It's like, look, I mean, he had to split. They were going to have to play both of those guys.
Yes.
So that automatically, that's going to mitigate some of the production, because you got a big time dude and Aiden Holloway there. It's ironic that both of them decided to bounce, but you added him to the mix. You went down to, you talk about kind of adjusting. You went down and grabbed a Buckeye, right? Now it's great though. I mean, we welcome all guys from the dark side around here, right? Because they see in the light, as Roddy Gayle did. So what about Roddy? What does he bring to the table?
Man, I mean, when I think about the guys that we have signed so far, and I don't want to say I'm more excited about any of them, because I think we're trying to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. But in terms of a guy who's maybe right on the cusp of breaking through to being maybe more nationally well known, he's the guy. I mean, some of these other guys who've talked about have gotten more pub already coming in. But I think he's the guy just kind of flying on radar. He's going to have a little bit of a target on his back. We talked about that. That's part of it. You got to embrace it. But I've known about him for a long time, being from New York, and just watching him grow and seeing where he could become, one of our best scorers. He's a guy who can get to the free throw line a lot. He's an elite free throw shooter. I think he shot almost 90% in conference play, 80 overall. He's a guy who's going to be a big-time rebounder. He's another guy who's, takes care of the basketball. He can do a better job there. But he scored efficiently in a low volume. And again, when you put together a team, you got to have guys who are willing to share that responsibility, but also sacrifice a little bit. And Roddy, again, even with some of the hate he's going to get coming this way, we're going to put our arms around him and help him become a great player.
He won't get any hate from Michigan. He's going to get a lot of hate from Ohio State. It's going to be real interesting to see how that goes.
I want to make sure the semester was over down there before he got it.
Right? Oh, man, they got alpha blood. I'm scaring Webb down there in case you didn't know. They don't even come over that. All right. Sam Walters played for one of my dudes. Nate Oates, I've known for 20 years.
Absolutely.
That's my guy, right?
Yeah, Romulus.
And so he wants a lot of shooters. And Sam Walters was a shooter, right? But obviously needed a change of scenery. That one is one of the easier ones to see to fit, at least for me. But talk about what he brings to the table for you guys.
Yeah, almost to the conversation we were having earlier. You look up and you're like, this 6'10" guy, he's a post player. And we're like, I don't know if you watched him play. He weighs about 190 pounds. So we're going to address that, right? He's got to continue to put on more weight. But, sharpshooter, deluxe. I mean, a guy who not only can shoot it, but is willing to shoot it and got a lot of work done in very little time. Playing on a really good team that obviously went to the Final Four for a great coach who had a similar philosophy. I think the style of play was intriguing to him because he saw a lot of similarities in the way we played versus how he was able to have success in a smaller role on a really good team. So lefty, he's got tremendous confidence in himself. He believes he's going to be really good. He's another guy that we can see his best basketballs still out in front of him. He hasn't peaked close to it. And so if we get him in here this summer and get 10, 15 more pounds on him and have him able to make some plays off the dribble and take some physicality driving the basketball, he can become a really well-rounded offensive player.
What's going to be the philosophy? I'm curious what your personal philosophy is, but how it aligns with the Dusties on a rotation. Some coaches like, hey, man, I'm keeping my rotation tight, 7 players. You got other teams, other coaches like, hey, man, I'm playing 10 guys. Do you have is there an ideal mix as far as you guys are concerned about what a rotation is going to look like?
Yeah, so we talk about adaptability, and the roster is not complete. So we want to wait till we have a complete roster because you can only coach to what you have, right? And so we feel good about being able to put a couple other linchpin pieces together on this roster. But until then, I think in an ideal world, if you want to get an answer, it would be to play 8 guys. You have a couple, guard subs and at least one big sub, and those guys do the lion's share of the playing. And then you got some other guys who are waiting in the wings in case you have injury or illness or something like that disrupts your rotation. But right now, we're just not at that place yet to really make that decision on this particular team.
We're talking to Michigan assistant basketball coach Mike Boynton here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. So you said the roster is not complete. There are some pieces that can't be announced yet because it's not formal and official. But of the guys who were on the roster when you got here, have all of those guys made the decision to stay, or are they still in the process of making decisions of what they're going to do moving forward?
That's one of the more challenging parts of the process. So I think when Coach May got here, which was probably 3 weeks maybe before I came myself, everybody was in the portal. I think everybody took their time to figure out, what's out there for me, which is fine. That's their prerogative. But Coach has got an opportunity just to meet with these guys, and a couple of them have still been hanging around. I think a couple of them have announced their intention to go different places. I don't think everybody's made that decision, but I think Coach is obviously getting to a point where, as we're putting together our roster, the guys are maybe seeing, maybe I ought to look somewhere else if I'm not going to be a primary part of what they're doing moving forward, which, again, we support. One of the things I want to give Coach Howard, they had really good kids here. Every one of them that I've had an opportunity to interact with has been, pretty easy to talk to. Seemed like they got a pretty good head on the shoulders. Some of them I knew. Namari was at Texas Tech when I was at Oklahoma State as a freshman, obviously, so he was in the league at the time. I recruited in D.C. well, so I knew T. Will pretty well. Taris was at Linkier where I recruited some guys. So some of these guys I had some familiarity with. But so I want to give those guys credit for just recruiting good people that represented the Michigan brand the right way. But again, everybody's going to at some point make a decision on their individual future. And Coach May's job is to try to put the best team together in that, in the meantime, and see kind of where the chips fall at the end.
Yeah, everything affects everything, right? Yes. Who you get affects them. Who enters the portal affects you. Because, man, it's dudes still jumping in the portal right now.
No, listen, we saw it. We were kind of it's kind of joking. You kind of joke about it as a coach, but Texas had a big weekend or whatever a couple weeks ago, right? They got like 3 guys in one night. The next day, they lost 4 guys. It's like, I think they had a good weekend, but now it doesn't look like it was that great. Maybe these guys coming in, maybe these guys say, I don't want to be a part of that anymore. But and that's what you deal with. and this, I think that's just part of the landscape. You gotta, like I talked about before, you gotta adjust.
So another sort of balance question, which you got without thinking about names, I think you have to be mindful of in your current situation. You got a certain number of spots left, and you got a high school recruit who you feel is really good, can maybe come in and help, but you got a portal guy who you feel like can come in and help more right away. One might have bigger upside, but he's farther away from reaching it.
Sure.
Which direction do you go?
It depends what else you have. You know, if your roster's in a place where the young guy has enough protection that you can put him out there enough. Because one of the things you got to take into account is there are very few freshmen who can truly impact winning at this level in this league against the type of teams, coaches you're going to go up against. And so is it worth it to take the freshman, knowing that you're not going to play him very much, and lose him, versus have the relationship, let the freshman go somewhere else where he's probably not going to play as much either. And then he's going to go in the portal, and now you saved yourself some time and headache, not having to deal with the nasty part of that transition for him. But if you got a really young team and you need some older, more experienced guys to come be a part of helping you win right away, then you're probably going to lean to the portal guy. And again, we're trying to strike that balance. We found a couple guys like Rubin with 1 year. And so we know we're going to have at least one spot we'll have to replace in that regard. Roddy and Tre are both just juniors. So if they're here for 2 years, you can kind of put that thought out of a few years. And then you talk about Pippen, you know, I don't know if he'll stay in college for 4 years, but at least you're not thinking about him leaving right away because you think he can be a part of what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so you've been on the job here with Dusty for a limited amount of time. What have you learned about him in this brief period? Because I tell you what, the thing that surprised me most, I met Dusty 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
So I and watched him over the course of his career and sort of had a feel for who I think he was and thought he was as a coach. But he came in the door talking about, we're not rebuilding. We're reloading. It's not just make the tournament. He's telling people I'm trying to go to the Final Four this year, which you want to be a goal, but to speak it publicly, to set that expectation is not something that you hear a lot of coaches do in year one when you're flipping an entire roster. So, you know, you get a feel for how that guy ticks, how he thinks, how he moves. Working next to him, what have you kind of discovered about him in this brief period of time?
Yeah, I'll say this, a couple things that I've just been overly impressed with, you know, his willingness to speak that in the building every day, because I can see a lot of coaches that go out and they're trying to rally support and get people excited, but really in behind the doors, they're like, man, I just don't know if we're going to be able to do it. And no, he's speaking like that, like every day. What are we doing today to put ourselves in position, not to get to the tournament or to move ourselves from wherever we were in the conference up a few spots, but we want to compete for a Big Ten championship. And that's the way he talks in the office every day. So it's not just for public, it's for our staff to be on edge, to turn over every rock, to make sure that the pieces fit. Don't just take a bad fit talent-wise so that we can say we got the best recruit on paper, but how do we put the best team together? The other thing is, because I thought that I worked really hard. I thought I was a high-energy, go guy. And I'm not sure I can keep up with this dude, man.
Yeah, he's a grinder.
I mean, he's a grinder.
Yeah.
He's a guy who wakes up every day he's seeking out discomfort. He's seeking out ways to get himself outside the box where he can be great, where this program can be put in a position to be a team that not just is worried about being on the bubble or getting in the tournament, but it's like, we want to be high seed. We want to be priority location team. We want to have our fans thinking about buying tickets to go to San Antonio. Like, those are the conversations we're having every day in the office.
Yeah, man. He's that dude. You could definitely pick up on it. So you're focused on completing the roster. Can you kind of take us into what the schedule looks like in terms of when you can engage with players, when they all get here? What does the schedule look like over the next few weeks / months? Yeah,
so obviously the semester currently that's going on isn't over. I think next week maybe finals and then the graduation. I have a few guys that walk. And then what we'll start to figure out is what's best for this group, because the summer schedule is a little bit different than some of the places we're coming from. I think summer school starts a little bit earlier here, like May 7th, where obviously like the high school kids aren't even done with high school. So like Pippen probably wouldn't be able to be here that early. So we'll probably push back into early June before we bring the guys here. And then we'll figure out the balance of the 8 weeks that we get to use with him, starting to put in the foundation of his style of play, which is fast, which is a lot of live play, quick decision-making, and then defensively, just how we're going to play in terms of how the pieces come together and fit.
So you get a scouting report on the league from Brad yet? Or is he like, you're the enemy now, I'm not helping you out with that?
So I talked to Brad. We don't talk often, but we're still fairly close. I watch basketball incessantly. Probably the only league that I watch even close to as much as I watched the Big 12 was the Big 10, partly because of that. But also because I'm really close to Coach Painter. I worked with USA Basketball the last 4 years. He's a big part of that. And so I've watched this conference, and I know as difficult as the task I had as a head coach in the Big 12 for the last 7 years, this one is just as challenging, if not more, to see Coach Paint take Purdue to a national championship game and obviously have the breakthrough, get to the Final Four. I mean, I was pulling for him, to be honest. I probably shouldn't say that now as a coach in the league, but last year, right, I was pulling for Painter to get the job done. But no, I'm excited about the opportunity. It's a great league with great coaches. There's a lot of really good recruiting going on in the league right now. And obviously that gets all of our competitive juices going.
Yeah, I love Paint. One of my favorite coaches.
Just a great dude.
Yeah, just a great dude. Absolutely great dude. I've known coaches who have worked for him. It's you want to beat everybody.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you root for his success. Man, nobody around here roots for Michigan State's success. Nobody roots for Tom Izzo to do well. So that is
that's a real thing.
That's a real thing around here. So have you been indoctrinated along those lines?
Well, again, I'll go back to my family. My wife is from Holland, Michigan. And she's not a Michigan State fan. She actually said when she played volleyball coming up that she got offers to go to camps at both places and she never went up there. So
it's a good woman right there. It's a good woman right there. Haven't even met her yet. No, that's a good woman, man. But I want to learn more about you in this last 5 or so minutes that we have. I'm going to ask you some challenging questions that are more personal.
Yeah.
But it's letting me get to know you.
Absolutely.
So you point guard.
Point guard.
Right. And so we talked about all the great New York point guards.
Yes.
When we get into the conversation about greatest point guards of all time. And I'm talking about, well, first of all, what's a point guard to you? Because point guard today is not the same as point guard.
It's evolved.
It's really evolved. I mean, some people consider Steph Curry a point guard. Right. I don't know if you do, but what is your concept of a point guard?
Again, just from a philosophical standpoint, this is what I talk to our point guards about. The number one judge in my mind of a point guard is your team better because you're on the floor? It's kind of big picture mind, but like, do your teammates feel like they're going to be successful because you're out there with them?
Okay.
And so do you understand what that means in terms of, does your big guy like the ball at the corner of the backboard for lobs as opposed to a bounce pass in transition? Does your wing shooter like the ball here? Like those are things, if you study your teammates and you know them well enough, you can get in. But from a basketball playing standpoint, got to be able to defend your position at a high level. Got to be tremendously vocal. You got to be able to take care of basketball. Scoring, from my mindset, is a secondary aspect.
Okay.
But not being able to score is a problem from that position.
Okay, so let's go an all-time great. So we get in this discussion a lot here. Isaiah Thomas.
Yes.
They left my man off the dream team. And they put John Stockton on that team. I don't think it's even close. Now I shouldn't.
There's obviously a lot more to that.
I shouldn't skew. There is a lot more to that. But compare those two. Where does Zeke fit on your list of point guards, the pantheon of great point guards?
Yeah, I think, just in the overall landscape of conversation in basketball, I think Zeke is maybe one of the more underappreciated players to ever play the game. Just from a normal fan standpoint. In fact, kids nowadays think that the new Isaiah Thomas is Isaiah Thomas.
Oh, give me.
And so we have to say Zeke to help them understand, hey, there was this dude that was really good back in the 90s, man. And so I got tremendous respect for him, obviously knowing where he came from and the competitiveness he showed. Tim Hardaway, Kevin Johns, like guys like that who people just don't know about. I'll have to admit, even though I'm not a Sparty guy at all, for my money, Magic was the best.
Oh yeah. But see, I put him in a class all of his own. He was such a unique dude. I
Yeah.
mean, he's a unicorn, a 6'9" point guard. You know,
But Oscar Robinson and Tiny Archibald,
Yeah.
who helped train me when I was growing up, like those are the guys that I watched the game through their eyes and learned how to play the position.
yeah, I always say Zeke could do what Stockton could do. He averaged 13.9 assists in the season.
Way
Stockton,
better athlete, way
Yeah.
better defender, like just. But he had an edge that would rub people the wrong way,
Right.
and you know, Stock was kind of like clean cut and out the
Yeah.
way, and you know.
Yeah, yeah. Hey man, they made that decision on the dream team. In the first game, Zeke saw him. He gave him 40.
Oh yeah. No, he.
That's what you get.
I think if they played today, right now, wherever they are, if they met somewhere right now, that he would still play with that chip on his shoulder.
All right, so you're a Brooklyn guy. You a rap fan? You a rap fan?
Oh yeah, absolutely,
right.
absolutely.
So we
not new rap though.
Okay, I mean, I used to say we kindred spirits on that. So I got some guys I do a show with. Shout out to my Dropping Dimes crew, Devin Gardner, who's a great quarterback here. Daniel Horton, I don't know if yeah. So from Texas,
absolutely,
big time point guard. We on this show. I'm not even talking rap, and they come at me because I say maybe the best debut album of all time is Nas. He's a Queens guy.
Nas is Queens guy.
He's the Queens guy.
Illmatic.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And then they came with the Brooklyn Night. They came with Jay-Z. I love
Reasonable Doubt.
Reasonable Doubt was outstanding.
Yes.
But if you had to rate the albums, and if I concede to you that I put number one on my list, Another Brooklyn Night, I put Biggie number one.
Okay.
So I'm giving you Brooklyn guy.
I'm there on the go for Big.
But compare for me, Illmatic and Reasonable Doubt. I'm about to judge.
I can't unbiasedly judge the two. It's a real thing. I don't even say I'm from New York City.
You say, yeah, I'm Brooklyn.
I'm from Brooklyn. People always say, hey, man, are you from New York City? I said, no, I'm not from New York City. I'm from Brooklyn, man. So, it's a real thing. And so it'd be hard for me to say, but I have a lot of respect for Nas. I actually am a big Nas fan. I love his style, his confidence, his ability to kind of transcend the eras of rap in a way almost, just like Jay has, and be adaptable through the game. But I'll give the edge to Hov on this one.
Oh man, we were doing so well, and I love the album. It's outstanding, but we were doing so well, man. No, it's gonna be a great time having you here. It's been a tremendous introduction to you. On our way out here, your impressions of Michigan so far, because you coached a lot of places and you coached all over the country. You've gotten a feel for the kind of fan support that is around elsewhere, the kind of administrative support that is a facility, facilities and donor support that they have. What have been your impressions of Michigan and how it stacks up to the other places that you've seen?
Well, again, it's one thing to hear about a place or even talk to people about a place, but until you get your feet on the ground yourself, I could not imagine being more impressed than I've been in the first weeks. And I'll say this, they're redoing our locker room right now. It was already really nice. And I think our players have a first-class place to call home there. I think season tickets are going up the early part of May. So if you're out there as a fan, please buy your season tickets, come out. And I think you're going to enjoy the brand of basketball, the type of players that we have here, but also the energy that Coach May is going to coach with. We're going to get the students back involved. And so get your season tickets as soon as you can. But the hospitability, I guess, people have been really, really nice here. I haven't found a bad place to eat in town.
There you go.
And I've been to about 15 different restaurants.
Okay.
So it's cool, man. I'm a cooler weather guy. I'm a Four Seasons guy. So this is going to give me a chance to be back in that area. But I just love it, man. I've never been to Ann Arbor. Obviously, I've been through Michigan several times, but I've never been to Ann Arbor. And it's bigger than I thought. It's much more closer to a city than a college town, even though say it's a really, really big college town here. And so everybody's been really nice, and I'm looking forward to getting to meet people. I haven't met that many people because I hasn't been down trying to get this roster together. But I'm looking forward to being out in the community, having my wife and kids here soon, and have an opportunity to impact it, but also be impacted by it.
Well, man, appreciate you for letting us introduce you to the people.
Well, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing everybody. Go Blue.
All right, folks. Michigan assistant basketball coach Mike Boynton. We went a little overtime, but it was worth it, right? Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, The Ticket, the official voice.